Evening, everyone. ESBR Boxing. Elliot Greig here again, joined by my esteemed co-colleague Owen McKendry. We're here to take you through another one of our, I suppose, of our festive crackers of some content, as that were. And obviously, we've done some previews. We're looking at some reviews. This is more of, I suppose, of a preview for what's upcoming, what we'd like to see upcoming in 2023. We're going to focus on so which fight? Well, it's supposed to be which one fight would you like to see in 2023? But Owen and I have taken the editorial decision that one fight alone, frankly, isn't enough. So we're going to take 3 fights, but they're all going to be broken down slightly differently, and we'll explain each and every one before we get into it. Before we get into it, Owen, I just want to come to you, mate, and ask you how you're doing. Are you well?
Not too bad, mate. All good, all good. As always, delighted to be back for another video.
Excellent. It's good to have you here. So as I said, we've got 3 categories, essentially, and what we're going to start with is going to be a fight we'd like to see next year, 2023, between 2 British fighters. So an all-British fight next year. And without further ado, I'm going to submit one. Owen's going to submit one, but we're going to bounce over to start with you, Owen. So your all-British fight, please, for 2023.
My all-British fight for 2023, it's not the most glamorous and high-profile yet, but it would be Dennis McCann and Leon Davis.
Ooh.
I think Leon's a European champion. Got a great victory over Baluta. I don't know how you say Ionut, something like that. I don't know how you say his first name. European champ. Dennis McCann's sort of cruising through the levels at the minute. You know, he's up to Commonwealth level. Everything that's been put in his path. You know, he's just he destroyed Joe Ham. Who's as game as they come. He smashed up James Beats Jr., who's just beaten unbeaten prospect Raza Hamza in Coventry for the IBO Continental title. So Dennis McCann's stock is just rising and rising and rising. I think he will go to the top, but at the moment, I think it's 2 fighters. I was at the O2 when Dennis McCann was fighting against Joe Ham. And he fought. Leon Davis was in the arena watching. There was a lot of Dennis McCann's fan base, family, friends there, giving Leon a load of stick. Leon sort of said, "I'll take whatever fight," and obviously, as we know, Dennis says whatever Uncle Frank says, I'll do. I think it's a bit of a domestic tear-up. I think the winner of that goes on to great things. So yeah, I think it's low key, but I think Dennis McCann makes any fight fairly big at the moment. But yeah, I think for whatever belt they put on the line, European, Commonwealth, whether they vacate and it's for a vacant international, something like that, WBC silver along those lines. I think personally that's a huge fight.
No, I think that's a great fight. We haven't. I should caveat this by saying we haven't actually divulged what we're going to pick before this video started. So that is not necessarily. It shocked me in some ways, only because I wasn't expecting you potentially to go that division. But not that there's any criticisms to that at all. I think that's a massive fight, and like you said, it's building, isn't it? Like we said, we saw the footage obviously with was it 10 grand bet they were talking about. Leon Davis was getting abused about a 10 grand bet in that one. Before I submit my one. What I'm going to ask you is this, though. Owen, to say that fight takes place front end of next year, who are you picking? Which way would you lean?
It's hard because I think Dennis McCann's the better fighter, but on paper, winning the European title, beating Baluta, who we've seen in some tear-ups, I think on paper that shows a higher level, but I think the way McCann's dispatched of everyone, I think he's superstardom, beckons. He's got the travelling background, he's got the support. Like he says, he walks it, he talks it. He comes out with his suits. I think he's just got a superstar profile. I think McCann takes it and goes on to bigger things. But I do think it's a fight where it's a setback for the loser, but I don't think it's necessarily one where it's right, we need to go back to the drawing board here and seriously think. I think whoever wins it propels themselves, and I think whoever loses will come out with great credit and sort of just go in at the same level. But yeah, I'd have McCann. Not a clue how he wins. I'd have to have a real good think about that, but I do think McCann would win.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it like that. I actually agree with you, but it's one of the things where I'd have been 100% McCann before that Beluta victory, and I was a bit like, wow, I was not expecting. That was a surprise victory for me in some ways. To be perfectly honest, I was not expecting Davis to come through that, so his stock's risen massively in that time as well. But a great suggestion, Owen. Thank you. You've kicked this off actually fantastically well there. You've taken in the I think the boxing aficionados will know that one. I'm trying to sweep this in for, I suppose, more for the boxing casuals. Not that that's in any way criticism of anyone, because I consider myself also to be one. But we're going now, Owen, for my recommendation, which will be the heavyweight division. And it's not the fight that everyone wants to see, I don't think. It's not obviously Fury AJ, though it does involve AJ. I actually would really love to see AJ next year. I know he's going to probably fight Dillian Whyte, which obviously isn't all British in that respect, but I'm actually going for AJ versus Joyce. That's my selection. And the reason I really want to see that is because, I mean, obviously, it doesn't really need much introduction. Essentially, both Olympians, but also you've got AJ, whose stock has obviously been up here for some time, taking a bit of a dent against obviously the Usyk losses, undeservedly so. Actually, I think, to be perfectly honest, don't think his stock deserves to be where it seems to be plummeting in some sort of audience subsets. But Joyce is going like this, hasn't he? Last year got that win over Parker. I've seen Joyce a few times, and I vowed never to watch him again after that night in Stevenage. But he's actually, to be honest with you, he's brought me round, and now I'm just genuinely intrigued to see whether style-wise that kind of just relentless punching and sort of front foot marching that Joyce does would stand up against AJ. Obviously, AJ's known for not obviously necessarily carrying the power of Wilder, but being obviously powerful enough to stop a significant number of opponents. So just whether Joyce can go again. I think if Joyce can take that power, don't get me wrong, I expect AJ to have too much room in regards to sort of speed, hitting him constantly. But if Joyce can kind of walk that down, could he get to AJ later on? Could he beat him? That would be a fight I would love to see. Will we see it? Possibly not, because I think AJ needs to kind of win next. So I think that's probably tough. A fight that's probably too tough for him and not necessarily in the making. But that would be I would love to see that fight, frankly, British fight next year.
No, I'm here for it. I think Joyce. I personally had Joseph Parker beating Joyce, but purely because of styles. You know, although it's cliche, styles do make fights. I just thought if Parker could get on the back foot and move around for 12 rounds, then he'd get through it on points. But Joyce went up so much in my estimation. You know, the first man stopped Parker, and the way he stopped him was brutal. Obviously, Parker had been training with Fury, Andy Lee sort of thing. So it was going into it a case of Parker could seriously stop Joyce here. You know, he's been 12 months training with those sort of camps. He's going to have some sort of power. And to be honest, there's not many a heavyweight that would have took the shots Joyce took. His chin is just, I don't know what it's made of. I think to say it's made of granites. Bit harsh on him because he just walked everything down, and I was surprised, but it was unbelievable from Joyce. And realistically, although Parker's a big name, I think now we need a Fury, an Usyk, and AJ. Before, if you'd have said we're going to put Joyce in with one of the three names I've just mentioned, I'd have sort of not necessarily laughed, but not yet. Let's see what he can do. I'm all for it. Throw him in. I'll make the fight. I think it's a horrible fight for AJ. In terms of, although again Parker style, AJ is going to have the speed. In terms of punches and bunches, he'll have the power in that area. But in terms of the sort of you're walking it down, basic jab, right hook. If Joyce lands, I think AJ could be in a bit of bother. So it's an intriguing one because, again, if AJ can box how he sort of did against Andy Ruiz in the second fight, although he got labelled boring, I thought he was brilliant. Perfect fight. If he can do that, then he probably beats Joyce. But it's a serious question. Can anyone do that to Joyce for 12 rounds? So although I think everyone watching and myself, I do have to say, thought you was going to say Dillian Whyte. I did think that's where you was going. But yeah, brilliant fight. What's your prediction?
I actually, to be honest with you, this is going to sound it's so hard because I actually agree with everything you said there. Really brilliant summary, actually, of the fight. I fully agree that I think the AJ performance against Ruiz was fantastic in the second one. Like, you got a lot of criticism from some people, but I thought it was exactly what you needed. Go over there, do the job under the pressure he was under. Fantastic. Joe Joyce, unbelievable the punches he took against Parker, like cleanly hit repeatedly every single round, then just walking it down. I really don't know. I've got a funny suspicion that he might actually beat AJ. Don't get me wrong. I think he'll ship rounds. Obviously, like AJ's a better boxer than him, of course he is. But I just think at some point, like AJ's been seen tiring before back into fights. I just think against obviously Usyk, we saw it. Smaller, obviously, smaller guy. But I just think Joyce is just so relentless that he's like you say, it's a horrible night for anyone. I would lean slightly towards Joyce at this stage, to be perfectly honest with you. But I'm not sitting there saying that this is Joe Joyce's better boxer. I don't think he is. But yeah, I also think Joyce would be a horrible night, to be honest with you, for Usyk and for Fury. But I think Fury is fitter over 12 rounds to go that, and Usyk as well. But then the size would play a bit of a part into it. But I think for him, I think AJ would be the one that he could get over the line. But yeah, like you say, good fight. Thank you very much for sanctifying my one there, because we're going to come back to you now, Owen. And it's a second category, so we've had an all British fight. Now we're going to blend British fighter against an international fighter of any nation other than Britain. Owen, I come to you again, sir. Who are you going with?
So for the two international fighters, apologies to the casuals again. You've got your Spence Crawford, your sort of Tank Davis against Ryan Garcia's, but I'm going to go for Naya Inoue to vacate, step up, and take on Stephen Fulton.
Wow.
I think in terms of pound for pound rankings, I've personally got Inoue number one. I don't think there's anything left for him in his division. He's absolutely, and when I say wipe the floor with everyone, he's just cruised through that division and literally just smashed his way through anyone in front of him. Stephen Fulton hasn't quite smashed through the whole division in the sort of emphatic fashion Inoue has, but Fulton's brilliant. I think he's one of the most underrated fighters in boxing at the moment. He goes under the radar. I think he's excellent, and like we say, styles make matchups. I think those two styles just gel unbelievably well. I think Inoue can adapt to box a boxer. I think we've shown he can go in like what he beat Nonito Donaire, knocked him out in 2 rounds. That sentence alone is outrageous, considering what Donaire's done in the sport. And I just think those two, when you look at what they've both done, there's not many boxing terms. There's not many bigger fights. Again, it's one that'll go under the radar. Could be Inoue's chance to come to Vegas or somewhere like that, take him away from Japan, or it could be for Fulton to go out to Japan, do the unthinkable like your Fury and Dusseldorf, that style. But yeah, my pick is Naya Inoue and Stephen Fulton.
That's a brilliant pick. That's a fantastic pick. And like you said, there's obviously Inoue will be moving up in weight. It's 4 pounds, I believe, isn't it? The differences between bantam and super bantam. I feel like with Inoue, we haven't really. I mean, don't get me wrong. I feel bad saying we haven't seen him test. He's gone the distance, obviously, with Nonito Donaire. But we've seen levels to him whereby he can obviously box. He can obviously stop people. He obviously carries power. So I'd be interested to see whether that power moves up in weight. Obviously, at 21 KOs and 24. But we've seen him stop fighters of renown, and that's what's been so surprising. And we've seen him just wipe through that division really with no real seeming regard or test. Fulton, like you say, different sort of proposition. I think he's 21-0 with only 8 KOs. So again, it's like, will he outbox Inoue? Basically, how will he approach that? Will it be him outboxing him, or will it be Inoue that power transferring, or even trying to box against him as well? So I think that's a fantastic fight. I actually am glad I don't have to give a prediction because it's your fight. So I'm going to go back to you and say, if it happens soon, if it happens, before either of these guys fight again, how would you see it going?
Oh, see this. I knew you were going to ask me it as well. Before we said we're doing this video, I knew predictions would have to come. I Inoue, he's one of my favourite fighters. I bang on about him all the time. I just think he's a real deal. Like you say, even though it's not a massive jump, there's always the question of, does the power carry up, whether it's £2 or £12. There's always the question when you step up in weight. Stephen Fulton showed his boxing IQ's unbelievable. Can he avoid the Inoue power? We've seen recently Paul Butler sort of avoided it, but was it a case of, which I personally feel Inoue didn't really get out of second gear? It was almost a case of not necessarily stopped him when he wanted to stop him, but it was a case of, right, when I properly put the pressure on, he's going to go here. So I would edge towards Inoue, but it's not like a house on it sort of thing.
What sort of percentage split you going? Like, what were you thinking?
I'm probably talking maybe 52-48.
Yeah.
So confident-ish in Inoue, but there's still the fact of there's so many factors surrounding it, and it'll be interesting to see him step up out of his comfort zone. And I think I would love it for someone like that if he went to Vegas. I'd love that fight to be in America, so either fighter gets the recognition they deserve from it. Whoever wins that, they deserve to go right to the top of boxing. So yeah, I'm going to go with Inoue, but not don't put your house on it, basically.
Another superb pick, Owen. Thank you for showing that. We're jumping the order a bit, so we're going international versus international. So I'm also going to submit my one now. And I actually did have, to be honest with you, on my shortlist, I did have Inoue versus Fulton, which is fantastic. I didn't have to necessarily have this sort of eloquence to describe it as you've described it there, but I'm going to go also, as you have, for a weight jump. And I'm going to go someone you did mention in your introduction to your one. I'm going to go lightweight to super lightweight, so £5. I'm going Tank Davis. I love Tank Davis. To be honest with you, you could put Tank Davis against anyone at lightweight. It'd be a super fight. But I've got a liking of this opponent here, who I would like to see him fight against, who's also been avoided. But I just think, again, styles, who stops who first. I'd like to see him fight Reggie Prograis. Genuinely. I mean, it probably won't happen, but why would it? I mean, they're both avoided. But it's just, I look at it and I just go, Prograis, 28-1. Obviously, that loss to Taylor, WBSS, with 24 knockouts.
No disgrace at all in that loss.
Davis, 27-0 with 25 KOs. Almost needs, when you see him, he went obviously UD with Cruz recently, stopped obviously Romero's talking a lot. We've seen him, obviously, Santa Cruz was a smaller man, but stopped Gamboa, even though Gamboa, granted, was a bit older. But still, not many people have done that. Obviously, Gamboa, so you're sitting there just going, I'd love to see those two just get it on me. I really would. And like you said as well, I almost feel like it needs, but it would be obviously in the US, but it just needs one of those Vegas. It needs a helicopter above the MGM circling around. It needs all that sort of stuff going. So that'd be my international versus international.
I'm here for it. I did sort of mention Tank. There's a lot of names you could go in with. Your likes of Ryan Garcia has been talked up a lot, but I like the punchers fight, like you say. Regis Prograis, some people felt he beat Josh Taylor. I wouldn't have called it a robbery if either fighter got the decision, really. Yeah. I thought it was one of the best fights I've watched in a long time. Again, it is cliche, but it is simple. Styles make fights, and I think Prograis, Tank, you can draw him into the war. You can see he can box, but I think it's so easy to sort of say, right, drop him, let's go. Head to head, let's just go in the middle of the ring. And I love Prograis. I'd love to see him back in with title contention. I'd like to say the Josh Taylor rematch probably isn't going to happen. Josh Taylor's fighting Jack Catterall, and then Josh Taylor probably needs to move up himself. He looks like he struggled to make the weight now. But yeah, Tank against anyone's a great fight, and Prograis comes to fight. So again, not a suggestion that's maybe the one that instantly jumps out, but it's an excellent one. And if I see that next year, I'd be delighted with it.
No, I'll be delighted with it as well. I think I'm struggling to pick it as well at the moment. I think my heart says Tank, so I just love Tank. But I think my head would also say, would Prograis have too much for him at the weight? Would the weight play into it? I don't know, but I would absolutely love to see that. But we're now going to come to our final category. We've done British, we've done international. We're now going to split the two. I want you to pick one British fighter, one international fighter, a fight next year. Who are you picking, please?
The common theme with myself tonight, I'm staying with the smaller boys. I'm going for Sonny Edwards against Jesse Bam Rodriguez.
Oh,
Yeah, I think Sonny is. Obviously, you've got Fury, but take Fury out the equation. I think Sonny Edwards is probably the best fighter we've got on these shores at the moment, and I don't think he gets the credit for how good he's been. Some of his wins have been absolutely. Some of his wins have been outrageous. Um, he's fighting punchers where we're questioning if he gets caught, what's going to happen, but he doesn't get caught. He just dances around everyone. He's talked of this fight for a while. He's clearly avoided Sonny Edwards. Jesse Rodriguez has just, in his last fight, defended his WBC title. So it makes sense. I think Sonny Edwards, there's not too much of a jump, like we said, with obviously the Naira Inoue fight. It's only like a 4 pound rise. When you're down in those weights, at your flyweights, your super flies, your bantams, super bantams, the jump isn't massive. So I think you can easily float around. And I think if Sonny Edwards gets the Rodriguez fight, if he wins it, then I think he'll just float around the weights and just pick up titles. Again, it's a fight where I think it's propelling to superstardom. I think it's hard with your lower weights to get the super. Like we've mentioned in previous videos, like your Chocolatito doesn't get the credit for what he's done in the game. I think Sonny Edwards is quite mouthy. He's quite active on social media. He interacts with fans. He argues. He bites. He looks for nibbles himself. So I think once he gets that major win, I think that's him propelled. But yeah, my ideal British fighter would be Sonny Edwards, and my ideal.
Unbelievable. No, I totally agree with you, mate. I totally agree with you 100%. I think Sonny Edwards against, like you said, like Rodriguez, Sonny Edwards against any of those big names, Martinez, even a sort of like, I mean, it might be a bit bigger for him, obviously, but like a Chocolatito or Estrada, any of those guys, just Sonny Edwards in. Let's see what he can do, because I feel like I agree with you as well, completely avoided. Again, like a horrible night's work for someone, essentially, in the sense that it's very hard to hit and has an engine as well. And then once we've seen Rodriguez almost had that kind of breakout performances for 3 times last year. Quadras, Wagner, Gonzalez, 3 out of 3. Almost like announced himself, didn't he, on kind of like semi-superstardom status really there. And you're sitting there going, well, yeah, put those guys in. And again, I think, what's he got, 11 KOs or something in 17 fights, I think, Rodriguez. So would he get to Sonny? Sonny's obviously not a known puncher, which he readily admits himself. So you sit there going, will he be able to get away from Rodriguez for 12 rounds? Would he be outbox him? I think we know how Sonny would approach it. It'd be interesting to see how Bam approached it as well. But I think that's a hell of a suggestion. And I am going to ask you which way you're leaning in that one. Either way, please, Owen.
Most confident of the night, Sonny Edwards. I genuinely can't see anyone that beats him down there. I think what he's got everything. Like, he hasn't got the knockouts, but I think the lower you weight, I think you can get away with it more. When we look at the likes of names that I've mentioned, like your Naira Inoue, even your Rodriguez, who are sort of knockout artists, they're a bit of a rarity in the lower weights. How many wars have we seen Chocolatito go through? And he's sort of, at one point, he was pound for pound number 1. So I think those weights, because it's the slicker fighters, the less weight, you can move around, you can dance around a bit more, lighter on your feet, using the balls of your feet to sort of maneuver your way out. Edwards gets in and out brilliantly, and I think from what he's shown, there's no one that's going to get to him. Might come back to bite me on the ass, that one, but from what I've seen at the moment, I just really cannot see anyone beating him. Although it'll be a UD for Edwards, he'll beat everyone by UD unless he gets a punch from the gods. I think, yeah, he cleans up every division that he goes into.
Yeah, no, that's a hell of a fight. I would love to see Sonny win that. I really would love to see him win that. I feel he deserves a sort of fight of that magnitude to come at the other end of it. And whether he, like you say, whether he has to go over to the US or whatever, just goes over there and puts on a show and really announces himself. And I'd be here for it. And I just hope, let's be honest, he's not going to stop Rodriguez. So I just hope the judging over there would give him a fair shake as well, frankly. But last fight, I'm going to come to my international versus Brit. And I'm going to go a bit higher up in the divisions, not too high though. I'm going British fighter, Chris Eubank Jr. International fighter, finally, I'm going Golovkin. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because I think, look, like, again, like Golovkin doesn't need an introduction. 42, 2-1, 40 years old though, but obviously, he's been around. Obviously middleweight champion, avoided. Like the welterweight division champion, avoided regularly, but still a champion, obviously the middleweight division. But 40 years old is what I'm thinking. I'm also thinking, seeing him against Canelo recently, seeing him a bit against Murata, like he's obviously lost a bit, which is no criticism of him. He's 40 years old. There was talk, obviously, wasn't there before, about Eubank fighting him and all that stuff about his pen. But I feel like, Eubank's 32 and 2. He's only 33. But I almost feel like Eubank, people get, and I'm guilty of this as well sometimes. You still think of him as like prospect Chris Eubank, but it's like I need to see Chris Eubank starting to sort of go a bit. And obviously, he's had like different stages in his career. Obviously, had the earlier stages where he had like the Billy Joe Saunders loss, where he fought the likes of Blackwell, Spike O'Sullivan, those sort of names. And he's sort of gone away a bit. He's gone into WBSS, lost obviously to Groves in that, which is no real criticism, considering that that's probably a weight beyond him, really, frankly, being up at super middle. Beating a sort of aging James DeGale, which again, he beat who's in front of you. Looked outstanding for several rounds against Liam Williams, then looked very average for the back end of that fight. And we'll see him against Liam Smith soon, so that'd be a good sort of level. But I almost feel like Chris Eubank, I need to see something else from Chris Eubank this year. I can't keep hearing like Chris Eubank's coming, Chris Eubank's got Warrior Code, Chris Eubank's talking to Roy Jones, whatever, and they're doing this, they're working on this plan. I need to see something this year. This needs to be a big year for Chris Eubank, to be honest with you. And I feel like a statement win against an old Golovkin would be that, frankly. Have thoughts on that? Would you watch it?
Yeah, I'm all over that. Again, it's not a fight that necessarily would spring to mind. But it's a perfect matchup, I think. You're at two stages of their career. Golovkin obviously coming back off another loss to Canelo. Although he should have had a win over him, but that's a long video itself. I think he's at a stage of his career where he wants to continue, but it's sort of he needs a win again. We got the win. It was over Murata, wasn't it? Before Canelo. Although he didn't look great in it, he done what he had to do. He plodded along. He got a brilliant stoppage. Looked for 3 or 4 rounds. He looked shades of the old Golovkin. Obviously went in against Canelo. Stupid fight, really. I know it's the Warriors' match, but Canelo was always winning it. And then you look at Chris Eubank Jr. It's now or never. Like you say, he's 33. He hasn't had a run really where he's gone on to do great things that has been promised. Obviously, Roy Jones has been working with him for a while now, so we'll see what sort of changes he's actually implemented. And I think it works. I think Eubank, like you say, he hasn't got a choice. This year has to be the big year for him. I think if he doesn't do it this year, he'll still fight because he's got a name, he'll make money, but he won't do what he's promised to do in the sport. I do think he beats Liam Williams. No disrespect to Liam Williams, not Liam Williams, Liam Smith, sorry. I do think he beats Liam Smith. I love Liam Smith, won a world title in a division where technically probably isn't good enough to win a world title. Great fighter, sort of in the pocket, in and out, but I don't think he's at that level. So for him to win a world title that he did win was absolutely outstanding. I think Eubank does come through him and then, make it. He'd beat Liam Smith. Golovkin sat around waiting for a fight, and it's sort of do or die really against Golovkin. If he dispatches of him, if he beats him comfortably, so be it. But again, I'll completely agree with it. It's a great shout for 2 very different reasons, which is what sometimes makes the best matchups. There's so much on the line. Who wins it?
I think I would lean just having seen Golovkin against Canelo. Don't get me wrong, obviously, like Canelo's Canelo, but I'll probably lean a bit towards Eubank. If Eubank can put that early Liam Williams performance on, I think he'll be at this stage for Golovkin. I think he'd actually beat him. But then at the same time, Eubank's got a hell of a chin, hasn't he? That's been known as well. Golovkin can obviously hurt him though at the same time, but I'd probably lean slightly towards Eubank. Probably, to be honest with you, on points. I think Eubank would probably be more active and maybe nick enough rounds, and then there'd be obviously sort of investment behind him. So I'd lean towards Eubank, but it'd break my heart in some ways. But also, I feel like I'd like to see Chris Eubank ascend as well. So Yeah,
No, no.
those are 3 fights. But I think, well, I think you'll agree, Owen, and I will certainly agree that we've had 6 cracking fights there. And I'd like to say to everyone watching this video, feel free to obviously pop your matchups in the comments below. Feel free to tell myself or Owen if you think we're talking rubbish on our predictions or even our picks, or congratulate us either, which would be a nice thing for us to have heading into this vicious period and throughout, to have a nice pat on the back, electronically or digitally, right? If not obviously physically. But there we so there we are, Owen. I'd like to say to everyone else, obviously we've got other content coming up. We've got what does a year look like for sort of prominent fighters, other stuff, related to sort of 2023, but also reviewing 2022. So look out for that and catch that video. But I'd like to say, Owen, thank you very much for joining me this evening, for your picks, your selections, and thank you guys for watching.